A deep breath in. Slowly and gradually, whenever we feel like it, we may open our eyes. And we'll start with the invocation. ॐ यो वै ब्रह्माणं विदधाति पूर्वं यो वै वेदांश्च प्रहिणोति तस्मै तं ह देव आत्मबुद्धिप्रकाशं मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Okay. So yesterday we saw how udrittam manashchittam yat prabhavat vrittayah. Now the consciousness is the source for all that is manifest also. Whether it's the body, even this body came about as the result of some two people getting together. So if we keep looking at the cause, and we'll see that the ultimate cause is the consciousness. So adoring that, recognizing the primacy of the consciousness. Recognizing the primacy of the consciousness does not take away from whatever we are doing in the world today. It does not take away, it doesn't mean that I should not be using my intellect. It does not mean that I should not be in society. No, nothing like that. Doing all that we are doing. Yet, if we can put our attention on the primacy of the consciousness, now we are talking. There's a very famous story of Shivaji Maharaj, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. It is said that one day he went to his guru and said, I feel so much peace here in the ashram. I wish I didn't have to go back to my office. I could stay here all my life. It's so nice to just be here in your presence, do the Sudarshan Kriya, do my sadhana. I just want to donate my whole kingdom to you. You take care of it. Whatever you want, you do. But let me just stay here. The Guru smiled and said, well, are you sure? Are you sure you won't want it back tomorrow? Think about it the whole night. Come back to me tomorrow. So Shivaji went, thought about it, and then came back the next day and said, yes, I'm sure. I've been there, done that, everything. My colleagues, everyone, they have their priorities. They still want to achieve something. But I think I've done my bit. I'd like to come to the ashram. I'd like to be at home. So the Guru smiled and said, okay, then I'll tell you what to do. I'll give you your seva. Shivaji was very happy. He said, wow, now I can really do what I really want to do, not what I have to do. So the Guru smiled and said, go sit on the throne, rule the kingdom. And Shivaji said, what? That's exactly what I wanted to give up. He said, yes, the kingdom is mine. You are mine. You do what I tell you to. It is said that there is something that shifted. I think the sound should be a little better now. So when Shivaji went to his guru and said, I'd like to give up everything and come to the ashram, the gurus made him sit on the throne. And it said that something shifted for Shivaji then. He did everything that he was doing. He ruled the kingdom, gave justice, fought wars, maintained the treasury, did everything that a king should be doing. And yet, in his mind, he was free of it. So, being efficient at whatever we are doing does not preclude us from recognizing the primacy of the consciousness. It's not that Shivaji said, okay, I'm going to rule, but it's all my gurus, so I'm going to just give away everything. I'll just be philanthropic and not really care about how to maintain. No. He did his role perfectly. And in doing his role perfectly, he was able to be so successful because for him, it was all his gurus. That feverishness that came about with the ownership, that dropped off and he was able to go to the next level. Not everyone can do that for sure. And it's perfectly okay if you don't do that. But if we are able to do this, if we are able to recognize the primacy of the consciousness, if we are able to recognize, if you're able to see the Guru Tattva, the presence, and recognize that there is something that's running this whole show, that sense allows us to be more effective, can allow us to be more effective in the world also. So then we saw how Udhritam Manashittam Yat Prabhavat Pratyaya, all the how all that the mind perceives that stirs the memory and various vrittis can arise. Then he goes on to tell the next sutra, which says, Buddhi Prayuktam Manu Bahyendriyam Dwari Kritya Vishayam Pratipadyate. So now you can ask, well, this is very interesting how the vritti is arising, but why does the mind stir the memory? What causes the mind to even perceive? The rishis were amazing at analyzing all the things that's happening at the subtle level. What is it? What happens when we think? What is happening when we are perceiving? No, many a times we don't even have this question. Okay, I'm seeing the color red, and another person next to me is also seeing that same color red. What are we actually having the same kind of neuronal impulses within us? Is the same thing happening within me that is happening? How do we actually agree that it's the color red? Maybe that person is experiencing some physically different sensation. Who knows? So our ancient rishis, they analyzed this and they said, how does the perception arise? What gives rise to perception? So then he says, Buddhi Prayuktam Manu. This Gurudev says it so beautifully. So, Buddhi Prayuktam Manu. Yukta means together. Buddhi Prayuktam Manu, when the intellect along with the mind Bahyendriyam dwarikritya. The dwara, the door, is the indriya. When when the intellect along with the mind goes out through the senses, Vishayam pratipadyate, then it recognizes the Vishaya, the objects of the senses. So if the mind is perceiving the sense, but if the intellect is not putting its attention there, then it is not really coming into my awareness. For example, so much of light pixels are falling on my eyes, so much of information is coming to my eyes, a part of that I'm seeing. For example, maybe I'm looking at the screen, but there's something behind the screen also. It's falling on my eyes, but I'm not really seeing it. And then of all that I'm seeing, all that I'm hearing, part of it, when the buddhi is in, when I actually analyze, when I start putting my attention there, that is when perception occurs. Just the mind gives rise to pure perception, but awareness comes from the buddhi once it gets processed by the intellect. So now this gives rise to a very interesting question. Say I'm experiencing something, I'm feeling miserable, I'm experiencing misery, I'm seeing something which is giving me pain. Someone said something to me and I feel upset about it. Now, two things have happened. One, perception, I've heard those words. And second, I've analyzed that. The same words, for some people, it causes misery. For some people, it doesn't cause misery. So, though people make the same meaning out of it, yet the intellect analyzes it differently for different people. What that what does this give? What hint does this give us? That even though the outside is the same, inside I can be different. That is definitely in my hands. Gurudev says so beautifully that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. So we go through a lot of situations. How our attitude towards that situations is definitely in our hands. I see a chocolate cake in front of me and my mouth starts watering. But I still have the choice whether I should get caught up in that or not. So, seeing the chocolate cake, well, I have no choice. Someone comes and puts it in front of me and says, Kashi Bhaiya, I brought it with lots of love for you. Now, I can't say I want to reverse time and make sure this person doesn't come in front of me with a chocolate cake. It's done. But what do I do with it? Do I say, okay, I'll eat it? Or do I say, no, I actually need to start looking like a yoga teacher. Please understand, it's not your emotion. And so that choice is always within me. Now, the chocolate cake is a very small example. But in our life, so many times the outside tends to decide the state of my mind. When when I put my attention on this mantra, this mechanism of awareness, the mind and the buddhi, then I realize so much more comes of my state of mind comes in my control. Often we think the state of my mind is really not in my control. Someone says something, I become happy. Someone says something, I become sad. And when we are able to have a say over our own self, then we have a say over our own life. So Gurudev says, just saying, oh, I'm experiencing is not enough. You can say to someone else, I'm experiencing it. But for yourself, you find out who is experiencing it. This question cannot be answered. You cannot answer to someone else, I am experiencing pain or pleasure. No. If you're saying you're experiencing pain or pleasure, it's wrong. It's the wrong answer. The answer to this question cannot be given. It has to be only found out. And you have to find this out yourself. There is no proxy for it. For me, this is such a beautiful technique that Gurudev gives, that every experience, when I can move on to the experiencer, then that's a technique for me, day to day to day, every day. Now, again, I don't mean that we should make our life so artificial that I keep saying, oh, I want to put who's this, who am I, who am I? No. But as we go through life, there are these glimpses, these insights that come in. And when we can uh, do our sadhana, when we do our meditation, when we do our sudarshan, when we go deeper into that, then you see that these insights blossom much more naturally. When we try to force it and try to make it into an intellectual exercise, it stays at the level of the intellect. But to allow it to go into the level of the being, that's where sadhana is required. Otherwise, all these this time, this talking is great because we love to engage with our intellect, but the truth is somewhere a little higher. It's like the finger that points to the moon. When you keep holding the finger, then you have lost the moon. You need to look at where the finger is pointing. Same way, these words are just pointers to the experience, to the to the experience of consciousness. And we can keep saying this experience of and keep repeating it ad nauseum. But it is truly 1 minute of silence. And today's meditation, that Om Namah Shivaya, oh my God, with Gurudev was so beautiful. And I think this is what all of this Yogasara Upanishad truly means. So Gurudev says there is no proxy for it. So there's no way that someone else can do this for you. There's no way that you said, oh, I read about this person who had this great experience. So just reading about it, I also had the experience. Yeah, great. But it's you who had the experience. So Gurudev says, this very question is the door to meditation. Any pain can lead you into meditation. Any misery will lead you into meditation. Any pleasure or joy will lead you into this meditation. Who is the one who is experiencing? That is all you have to ask. So beautiful. And then he says, in the next chapter, we'll see what comes next. So today we'll spend a little more time on interaction. Yesterday we really overshot. We went up to about 50 minutes. So as usual, it's time for great. So first, if there are, if anyone wants to say something, you can unmute and ask.
Jai Gurudev, काशी भैया,
Jai Gurudev.
आपने ये परसेप्शन के बारे में अभी समझाया हमें. What rises perception? What rises perception? उसमें इंटेलेक्ट के साथ उसी समय जब इंटेलेक्ट के साथ we have to have the awareness, and then at that moment you experience. Is this what?
So it's like
how does perception
arise? It's by intellect and the memory coming together. A lot of times, when it's just the intellect and the mind moving through the senses. Sometimes when it's just the mind, but the intellect is not there, the perception comes and goes, awareness comes and goes. Like, say, supposing you're very interested in what is being said right now, then your intellect is also focused, engaging itself with the mind. And so you're hearing something and your intellect is completely chewing on that. Say maybe you had a very difficult day and you're feeling a little tired and you just logged in because you say, that plant out there next to Kashi Bhaiya, that is so interesting. I've come to watch that plant. And then you say, okay, it looks very nice. Let me just relax. So your intellect, when it's not really engaged, you still listen to all the things, but nothing registers. Have you had this experience sometimes? You're listening to some lecture or you're listening to some talk, and you're hearing all the words, but as soon as you hear, the next moment you've forgotten it. It just
Yeah,
goes completely.
yeah.
So that's when the intellect was not involved, so perception didn't happen. But when
Oh,
intellect was
okay.
involved and the mind is there,
Got it.
then perception happens.
So when I'm dealing with children with intellectual disabilities,
Mhm.
we have 6 types of perceptions. So this has given me a lot of answers. Thank you.
Perfect. Radhika.
So how to help them to, thank you.
Yeah.
Kashivaya,
Yeah, Bakul.
yeah, good.
Check
But is it not also the memory which then interacts? See, if you just stop at the intellect level, mind and intellect, that's one, that's first. But does it memory also plays a part in your perception, isn't it? I mean, for example,
Absolutely.
you get the color red. Now you knew it is red because in your memory you remember that in your classroom you were taught that this color is red, and
Correct.
therefore you then deduce that this is red. I mean, you associated that. It's all because memory also comes into play, doesn't it?
Very beautiful. Actually, if you look at the way these rishis have put together this thing, it's for me, it's fascinating. It's amazing. So here, they actually uh, divide this whole process of perception into two parts. One is the perception, and then how our recognition arises out of it. The recognition is the vritti, that is when the mind stirs the memory. But for perception to happen, you need the buddhi and the mind to move outward. If the buddhi is
So,
at rest, then perception itself doesn't happen. Once perception happens, that gives rise to certain, that connects with certain impression, gives rise to something.
vritti.
Do you get what I'm saying? So here he has made it very clear that there are two parts to it. The first one is udhritam manaschittam et prabhavat vrittaya. So when the memory is stirred, the thoughts arise, what we think, oh, now my cognition has happened. But the step before that is perception, where the mind and the buddhi are both going outward. Without
Right,
that step, the second step will not happen.
right, right. Absolutely. Beautifully said. And very so logical.
So logical, I know.
So, Kashiji, that means the real culprit for me here is memory. Mind, intellect, intuition, everything is very easy for me. But memory, we have to make discerning decisions of what to remember and what not to remember. I think that is the crucial thing, no? You have to be selective about what you keep in your memory and what you delete from your memory. It's very important, I think, no?
Actually, the more you try to forget, the more you remember. So, actually speaking, the way that's where the key in the happiness program, the way Gurudev has brought out the point of memory and how we really can make a difference, how we can handle our own memories. I think that's where the key lies. So, when I keep thinking that any of this is my enemy, then I'm lost. When I recognize that these are just 7 layers of our existence, they're part of us. They're neither good nor bad. Like a knife is neither good nor bad. It depends on what you do with it. In the same way, memory is neither good nor bad. It's just a storehouse. But how do we handle it? That's the key. And that's where all the abhyasa comes in, all the practices come in. So when we do our meditation, the breathing, um, do a hollow and empty meditation on the advanced course, for example, all of these tend to help us to um, unclutter the memory. The Sahat Samadhi meditation, and I tell you that course, it gives such a beautiful insight into what meditation actually does, what mantras do to our consciousness, and how mantra helps us to really unload all the unwanted impressions that we tend to create. So mantras have a great impact on the mind and on all the layers of our existence, and how we can use these bija mantras, these seeds, to really make a difference, go deeper within our consciousness. So all our ancient rishis, they had all the tools, they had the theoretical framework to understand what's happening. And for someone who's interested in this, it's really so fascinating, isn't it, Neenaji?
Yeah, but there are two more things about memory. One is memory is not just our memory, but it's memory handed down from ages and ages ago. So that's a different kind of memory from our personal memory. And the other thing was that when you do something today that's very, very potent, that wipes out an earlier memory and you get a new memory.
Mhm.
So I found that really cleanses my memories that I don't want. Whenever I have a new memory, it comes and it takes out the other one. Like in chess, you take out one piece, like that.
I would actually say it's more like sweeping the dust under the carpet. It seems it has gone away, but it's still there. And it resurfaces, something kindles it. Maybe you go through some experience and that kindles that memory once again. So even though you think it has really gone away, the way to empty the memory is not to overwrite some other memory on top of it, but to really empty the
Yeah, correct. I agree. Yeah.
Raji?
Yeah. So where does knowledge fit in? Is knowledge also part of the memory?
This
Because
whole
when you hear
universe,
something
yeah.
which is very deep, like last evening we were talking about the consciousness and how it can manifest and change your world outside. So where that is kind of a knowledge, intuition knowledge, whatever you call it, okay, concept or whatever. Where does that fit in? That is that, and that's one question. And how do you tap into that kind of knowledge in the present moment? So I'm talking about two things here. I agree.
Absolutely.
But one is the present moment, and you don't delve in when you live in the present moment, you don't delve so much into memory. It is when you go a little bit into the past, it's when the memory comes alive too much, I think, or at least in my experience. And knowledge is that great gem sometimes that you need to access. It's there, irresistible of the memory, but that should come back and tell you when you're doing something, when you are actually forgetting knowledge. It says, hey, you have forgotten this part.
Mm-hmm. So the knowledge simply means that that you're just aware of the natural laws of nature, or, like there is a rightness about things which is called the rita, or the what is right. The universe works according to certain laws, certain principles. Gravity has a certain principle. When I know this, now I can use, you can use it to even build aeroplanes, and it seems as if it has overcome gravity. It's just using certain principles of physics to make a certain impact. In the same way, when I'm able to declutter my awareness, when the meditation helps us to declutter, then we are able to really kind of see or perceive. It's, yeah, exactly. So when the waves subside, then you can see the bottom of the lake. But if there are too many waves, then you only see the surface of the waves. So in that sense, knowledge is really getting to know the underlying reality of things. And that can happen when the vrittis subside, which is why there is so much emphasis on Yogaschitta Vritti Nirodha, how we can allow how we can allow the whirlpool to die down. It's not about emptying the lake of water, but just allowing the whirlpool to settle down. That allows us much more access to the rightness of things. So the way, for me, it has been, and like to see Gurudev answer questions, and he says it very openly. I have not read any books, and it's not about having gone through a certain rigor to get the knowledge, but he says so beautifully that how Kabir says, "Pothi pad pad jagmoa pandit bhaya na koi, dhai aakhar prem ke padhe so pandit hoy." So Kabir said so beautifully. He said that if you really want to be a Pandit, if you want to be in knowledge, then love or uh, getting in touch with the consciousness, uniting with the depth, this is really the key to accessing knowledge. And when we make it a practice, so if I'm doing my Sudarshan Kriya regularly, I'm doing my meditation regularly, over a period of time, the whole Antakarana, the mind, intellect, body, buddhi, ego, they get polished so beautifully that they tend to stay in a state where it's easier to look through them. So so as we go through life, all these antakarana, the mind, body, buddhi, intellect, and ego, they will have their own coloring, so to speak. And so you're actually looking at the self through these four window panes, which are different colors. But if you tend to clean them up and keep them clear, then even though they are there, it's as if they are not there. And I think that's the key to allowing ourselves to go deeper inside.
Is
Does that
every
make sense, Raji?
Yeah, I think you're talking about a lake that is clear, so you can see right through it. So it's the clarity and it gives you clarity when the mind is, when the memory is not getting stirred continuously, you get more clarity. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so we don't allow the whirlpool to form by not keeping on stirring the whole thing all the time, so to speak.
Yeah.
Kashi Bhaiya, you've explained it so beautifully that the four window panes with their different colors don't cease to matter when your consciousness, when your awareness is on the consciousness behind everything that is there, every feeling, every emotion, everything. If you can connect with your own consciousness, which is at the bottom of everything,
So
and
true, so true.
can hold on to the joy, then nothing else matters. This is what I feel, that memory, perception, all this is obliterated by when you are holding on to the joy and the awareness of the consciousness, which is the underlying reality.
Absolutely.
It's a work in progress. It's a work in progress, isn't it? It never does.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, when we keep thinking that I've already arrived, I think that's the beginning of the end. So it's always nice to keep saying that there is more, there is always more scope for things happening.
You know, when I do my asanas, and then I do pranayam, and then I do dhyan, and I do humming bee and all that, then after that, I really do experience samadhi, and what you talked about being uncluttered, that clear mind like a lake, it happens every time I do it. There's no question about it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But when I don't do it, the effect lasts for about a month or so. Then again, if I have to go back and do it, then I'm like your kriyas.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I connect very much with this pure consciousness thing. Very good.
Totally.
Okay, Bhaiya, now we
Yeah,
know
but-
we know your secret. How you answer questions, give such perfect examples with such great ease. You keep washing those four panes every second, you know, and you connect your consciousness immediately.
And you know, when in your manifest reality, when you're going about doing your work, when it doesn't go right because someone outside is not understanding what the situation is, you know how to handle it. Like today, I had some person, you know, I just knew how to handle it because I have been through what that person has been through. And you can see with clarity, and then you can explain it, and then it happens. So it does help you in your manifest reality, you know?
So totally, so totally. So good. So homework for, oh, is there someone else wants to say something?
Nishpagya, Duru here.
Yeah, Duru.
You started to talk about some technique of Gurudev. Did you share it or you are holding it for another time? I think I missed it.
No, the technique is that that when we look at our whatever we're experiencing, we think that that person is making me sad or this situation is making me sad. But recognizing that you're perceiving something, but it's your intellect. Unless your intellect is engaged in that, it's not going to give you uh, like, it's not going to affect you at all in that certain sense. So the more stronger our intellect, the more we can become more aware, then we stop engaging with things that are problematic to us. And that's a way in which unknowingly or knowingly, this is how we actually become good at handling situations. Maybe as there was a time when what someone said would have impacted us greatly, but after some time you see that, well, you've grown on the path and it's not really affecting you so much anymore.
Kashiji, I want to ask you a question.
Mhm.
You know, some people have illnesses like blood pressure and all these diabetes and all these funny things. If that person does their kriyas every day regularly and every day, that makes that the priority in their life and discipline, then can those illnesses go away?
Definitely better than not doing the kriya, if you see what I mean. You have an option of doing the kriya and not doing the kriya. Doing the kriya definitely has a big impact on the nervous system to start with, and that consciousness has the ability to change the manifest world. There are having, like, I will not be able to say that you do this, you'll get this, but I can definitely say that doing it is definitely better than not doing it, and it will definitely have an impact. There's so much anecdotal evidence, so much testimonials of so many people who have had that difference. So for sure. And this is what the Yogasara Upanishad says: the consciousness manifests the outside world. So when we can put our attention there, then we can make a difference to the world also. Great. Ekta ji, you were saying something.
Yes, I wanted to, but I thought the time is gone. So maybe
Last question for tonight.
So Kashi, as I mean, this is my experience. I'm asking from my experience. As we grow, we start perceiving things differently, and you understand, and some memory comes, and then you feel why in past could you not perceive it that way, and you were a little more in a different situation, maybe reactive or maybe judgmental. So when this happens, you don't want to necessarily there's no guilt, or you don't want to change, you cannot change that situation. So what do you do when such a thought comes that now that you are seeing things differently, earlier you could not see things differently? So do you go back to that situation again, or it's no point going back to that situation, and that's just your understanding for now?
So
do you understand what I'm trying?
Yeah. So the way I look at it is, I start feeling grateful, because a lot of times when I start feeling grateful that, oh my God, thank God I got this awareness. Otherwise, I would have probably wallowed in that whole muddled situation for longer time. Then it allows me to move ahead from that situation without carrying the guilt. A lot of times when we realize something that we did wrong in the past, it can give rise to guilt. It's like a pendulum. It was coming down, then it starts going up once again. Your whole idea is to stop the pendulum so that it doesn't do that yo-yo thing anymore. And gratefulness is a very powerful tool for you to stop that yo-yo that the mind keeps doing. Does that make sense, Ekta?
Yes, that makes sense. So there's no point to necessarily go into the past and think about it again. What's happened is happened. From now on, you should be grateful that you've understood that there could be better way of doing things.
Exactly. And you can continue to do whatever it is that can make the situation better now. Maybe there is something that you can do to make it better from now onwards with this new understanding. Correct. Maybe a different set of actions arise from you. So again, buddhi prayuktam manu. So the mind has perceived something, but when the buddhi changes, then your whole awareness of that situation changed. So even though what your manas perceived about that situation, your mind got in touch through the senses with the object of the senses. So someone said something and you perceived it in a certain way. Now your buddhi changed, your intellect changed, your understanding changed, and that's why your whole awareness of the situation changed. And so this is exactly what
Correct.
the Yogasara Upanishad is talking about. When that happens, then what do? So then you start feeling grateful. Oh, thank God, my intellect has progressed. So I'm able to see a different take on the same situation. And that being said, now with the intellect in a different situation, you can take a different set of actions. Maybe at this point of time, you can do a couple of actions to see how you can make a difference right now. So for sure, the feeling of guilt arises when you say, oh my God, I could have done something in the past. Why didn't this awareness come to me at that time? I would have done a much better job of things.
Correct.
So the feeling of gratefulness, thank God I've got this awareness, this buddhi has come up to this level, that allows you to get rid of that going into the past and the guilt trip that can happen. That can keep your focus on the action that you need to do right now. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Great.
Bhaiya, may I just ask one more question before we close for today?
Okay, Nidhi.
Okay. So, Bhaiya, while I understand this whole concept of how, the perception as it evolves and changes through the use of our buddhi, it works on us, and that's how our behavior, how we express ourselves also changes. But what you said yesterday about abhyasa and vairagya, and my own experience says that abhyasa is so crucial, because when I listen to you, this 1 hour, this 1.5 hour, any talk that I listen to, or I'm studying, it's very easy for me to absorb at that point of time. But when it comes into application, so 2 hours of a day, you're doing your kriya, your sadhana, 3 hours. But when you go into those remaining 20-21 hours, old habits come back up and it becomes harder. So then that abhyasa, which is 24/7 reminding yourself of who you really are, this, that I am that pure consciousness and nothing should taint me or taint my behavior. So just being in that knowledge, that awareness is, I think, it is a hammering that I have to give myself constantly. Of course, not a hammering, but it's a beautiful hammering. Only then will the lotus really blossom, because I just feel so many times that I'm working so hard on myself, but that change is tough, because old habits just spring up so quickly. And that vairagya, which you said, dispassion, I am so attached to so much still. And I wonder, I said, how will I ever get to a stage of dispassion when it is a lot of hard work, Bhaiya, is what I feel.
When you can be this passionate about knowledge, then you get dispassion.
Okay. Okay.
So that brings us to the end of this session. It's been really one. I love this Yogasara Upanishad and the kind of insights it can bring. And we'll keep meeting each other. Homework for today, just notice how changing the intellect can change your take on various perceptions. So we don't have to be afraid of what others are saying, the situations we are going through. The change can happen here, and that's when our whole perception can change. So let's look at this thing the whole of tomorrow, and we'll see what happens. When we do this, what next is what Gurudev covers in the next chapter. So good night, Shubharatri, sleep well, Jai Gurudev.
Night. Thank you, Kashi.
Jai Gurudev, Bhaiya.
Thank you very much.